Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Maro Code with Maro. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how to integrate APIs in Flutter. Now, in the course of the video, we'll learn how to use Dart classes and Dart functions, and also how to use how to update the state of a Flutter application. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, we're going to be looking at an API from boardapi.com, which is used to get different activities, random activities for when you're bored. Just tells you something you can do to keep yourself busy. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is this. This is the response when you call the API. Now, we're going to call a get response on this API endpoint, and we're going to get this response. Now, from this response, we're going to create our Dart class that we're going to use to update the UI that you see here. I already took the time to update the UI, so we won't spend so much time on the video. Now, first we have an activity. That's the thing they want you to do, and the type of activity, the number of participants that are required, the price, if you're going to pay any amount or you're going to spend any money fulfilling that activity, and then a link to the activity if there is a link available. So before we get started, we're going to just copy this and go to our VS Code, and then we're going to create a new folder and call it models, right? Models, and we're going to put activity model is going to be the name of the class we'll be creating, activity model.dart. Now, this model is going to contain everything that we just copied, so we just paste it here and we can comment this out. Now, the only reason why we brought this in is because we're going to need the names of these by the time we create our class, so we can use them to query the API. Now, so we'll just go on and say class. Now, this class activity is going to carry everything here. Now, you see that the participants is a number, which is an integer, and then price could either be an integer or a double, so we're going to go with a double here. So we'll start with string. The string is activity. The activity is a string. It's always going to be a string, and then the type is also going to be a string, and then participants, okay, link is going to be a string as well, so string link, and then we're going to go participants now, so integer participants. Now, if you are not familiar with that data types, you can check out the video, one of my videos, for a brief introduction to the kind of data that we'll be seeing today. Right, so back to this integer, and then we have price, which is a double. Now, we're going to create a constructor for this. Now, when this constructor is called, we expect that all of these variables will be available. So we're also going to make them required. So required this dot activity. Sorry, let's take this out. Okay, alright, and then we can close this now. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the factory method to get the data from the map when it's obtained. So we're going to pass everything back into this class and then use this class directly. So we just go factory and then activity dot from JSON. because we're expecting that when we get this activity back, it's going to come back as a JSON file, right? So that's what we're going to use. Now, this JSON file is going to be a map. All right, we're going to get a map of strings to dynamic variables, and then we're going to call it activity. Let's just call it activity. Yes. And then we can open this. Now this is going to return. It's going to return activity. It's going to return this activity object, right? So you see everything comes from here. So this is where all of this now will come in, right? So we have activity. Activity is going to be simply the activity map, and then this activity. We have to be sure that the spellings here are correct. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. All right. Now we're also going to just get all others that we need. Think, yes. Participants and price. Now what this does is when the data is received from the API, right, it's going to get sent, and then we'll update this object with the data that's from the API, which is a map. If you look at this carefully, you notice that this is actually a map of strings to dynamic variables. Now there could be problems if we just leave this way. So because we've required that everything should actually have an object, a variable or a value, sorry. So this will check if this is null, then it's going to return an empty string. Same with this too. So all the strings, if they will check if they're null, returns an empty string. Now this is going to make sure, this is going to help us ensure that everything is safe and we're not returning, okay, this is not going to be an empty string, this is going to be 0. And then we're going to ensure that everything we're passing back is going to have a value. Now price is, if it is null, is going to be 0.0, right? But here's the thing, right? Now when price was 0 from here, this will not be a double. This is actually an integer. So we'll come back here now and we're going to make this into a double. So first thing we do is to turn this to a string, and then we add double dot parse here. Now with that, we have everything that we need. Okay. All right. So with this, it means if we're passing this as a double, then it can no longer be null, right? So we have to take this out. So take this out. This is always going to be a string, so we can check if it is null, nothing is coming back from the server, and then we can use that. Now that we've created our class, we're going to import, or we're going to get a dependency from pub.dev. That's the HTTP dependency for us to, that's what we're going to use to make HTTP requests. So go to pub.dev and just, yes, get that. So now that we've gotten HTTP into our project, we're going to create another folder with a file for our API client. So we'll call it folder services, excuse me, services folder, and then we'll have our API client. And then in this class, all we're going to have is a function that's going to return the data that we're going to get from the server. So we could use a future, right, and ask this future to return, the type that will be returned will be the activity that we've created. So we import that automatically. Scroll up, you see it's been imported, and then we let's move this aside a little. Okay, we call this get activity. It's not going to take any arguments because we don't require that. So this will be asynchronous, and then it's going to have a return type. Like you can see there, it already has a return type, so it has to have a return type. So simply we're going to first go and get the link to the API that we'll be calling. But before that, let's get HTTP into our project here, into our file here, and then we'll import this as HTTP. Now this is what we're going to be using to make the GET request that we'll be needing to get the activities that we require. So all we need now is copy this. We'll copy this, say const URL is paste / activity. Now that we have this, we can then go on to make our HTTP request. So we await. Now this is going to be a final now. Response is going to be the value that we're going to get when we wait for the server to HTTP get us this URL. So URI.parse URL. Now when the server gets us this response is what we're going to then use to determine what we're going to do. Now generally positive responses are 200, but anything within the range of 200 is fine. So we're going to do a quick check. Say if response is going to return a status body. The response is going to return a status body and a status code. So status code is let's say less than 300, just to be safe. Alright, so what we're going to get from the response body is going to be a JSON object, right? So we're going to get our JSON object and say JSON response. Now we're going to turn that into a map, right, that we can use. JSON response is going to be JSON decode, and then we'll pass in the response body that we've gotten, right? Response.body. Now this is then going to give us the data that we received from the API, right? So this is now going to be an object that we can use, right? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this into the object that we're going to return. So for first, let's create a late activity and call it activity. Right, so this is going to get something now. This is activity we'll come here now and add that into the activity. So activity dot from JSON, and then just passing the activity, which is the JSON response that we've gotten. Just put this here and there. Then we can go down to the very end and return activity. All right, so this is assuming that everything's going to go well, right? So we assume that we'll have good reception and the API server will be okay. But just in case, we're going to add an else statement. Well, if anything goes wrong, so we're going to then print to our console. We're going to print the let's use debug print this time. Debug print response dot body, and that's it. So it's going to get that as a string and then print that out for us if anything goes wrong. Then from here we can go back to our main class where we have what we're going to call this now, and then make use of it. Right, so in the button we created, okay, let me bring that up. Now if you look here, we have an activity, and then we have yes, an activity, a type, participants, price. Let me see if I can expand this screen a little bit. Okay, so it's a little bigger now, and I think it's clearer. So we have this card. This card is showing the activity, its type, its participants, price. And then with this button, we should be able to get the activity we're waiting for, right? So we're going to do two things first. We're going to use a boolean. We're going to create a boolean variable. Let's say bool loading equals false. And then whenever it's loading, we're going to then update the activity accordingly. All right. So if you come to this container, you'd see that the child is a colon, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to come here and say loading. So if it's loading, we're going to then use have a circular progress indicator. Now the circular progress indicator by default is going to be blue, so we're going to change the color here now to white. Colors.white. And then to complete this, we can, yeah, so we have everything we need. Now we can make this const, so we don't have any issues. All right. Now this tells us that if the loading boolean is true, then this shows this. If it is not, it shows what we have here in this column. Now when we tap this button, we want to be able to, so we have an asynchronous, and then we're going to set state here now. So when it's tapped, we set state and we set loading to true. Okay, so what we did now is, instead of using the late initializer or a nullable instance, we're going to get the instance of the activity itself and then use the text that we would have used here for the others, right? So this 0.0 for price, and then we have participants at 0 and all that. The activity, this has to be constant. So what is a constant keyword there? And then we have the type, which is activity.type. Okay, this can't be constant anymore, so we'll take that out and then bring it here. And then for participants, okay, we have to take this out as well. So participants, we're just going to add, we're going to append this here. Let's say participants, and then we'll use this and say activity dot participants. I missed a spelling here. Activity dot participants. All right, and then add the const keyword here, and then for price is going to be okay, yeah, $. This is $sign here now, and then we're going to append this here and say activity dot price. Now all we've successfully done is we've been able to rearrange all of this. Let's put this here. We've been able to arrange all of this so that the data we're getting only comes from our object, right, or our class, which is the activity class. Now what we are checking to see if loading is true. You see everything updated now. If loading is true, now if loading is true, it's going to start rolling, right? So we could actually test that out and then tap here and see what happens. Oh wow, that's a very, very big loading indicator. But we're not concerned with UI for now, so I'm just going to change this back to false and tap it again so everything goes back to normal. Now that we have that, we can come there. So we can see now that when it's loading, that's going to keep rolling, right? Let's see what we can do to improve that, the look of that loading indicator. Okay, so with the height and width set for the loading indicator now, everything should be fine. So we take this out and bring this back up here. So const here, yeah, and that's it. So we'll go back now, and we're going to add the logic to call the our API client to get the data back for us. So here now we're going to say activity would be the value we'll get when we await the API client dot, okay, we have to import this, get activity. So that's basically it, right? So when we save this now, if everything goes well, then activity and everything here should be updated when we click on this button to get data, right? Let's go to our debug console so we're sure to follow up if anything goes wrong. All right, activity. Oh yeah, there's a little problem. A handshake error. It's more like a certificate verification error. Okay, so we're going to need to use HTTP overrides for this. Okay, so we're just going to get that and then we can proceed. All right, so this is what we need to be able to make this call, the HTTP overrides, and then we'll come to our main function and then add the overrides. So there. Now we're going to hot restart. And when we hot restart, we should be able to communicate with the server now. So now that we're done with hot restart, we can retry this, right? So we click on, okay, now before we retry, let's go back here and ensure that when we were done getting what we need, yes, it says here, yeah. So there's no way to set, we're not setting loading back to false, right? So we could actually wrap this in a try catch, okay, just to be safe. Come here, cut this out and paste it here. So we're trying this and we say we catch an error, and then whatever happens, we're going to set loading to false, right? What's happening? Okay, so here first, down, and then here we can paste this and then go back and say false. So whatever happens, we set it to false. Now if there's an error, we can then set activity back to itself. So activity will be the activity that we have here. So it's not going to change, okay? But if there's no error, then we get the activity that we'll get from here, and that's what we're going to use. That's what we're going to display on our app, right? So let's save this and try. Oh, okay. So there's another thing happening here, right? So there's a possibility that we've gotten our data back, but if you notice, we just set this to false, and if we actually check, now it could have been false, but it's not actually going to show on our app because we have not updated the state of the app. So remember I said earlier that we're going to also learn how to update the state of an app. So we're just going to use set state now we're just going to copy this. I think we should have copied the whole thing the first time. So copy this and get this out of here and put it here instead. Then copy the whole of this and put it right here. Okay, now we save and we're going to try again. We're actually going to use a hot restart so that we can. Okay, you see when we saved, everything came up, right? So we're going to do a hot restart so we can go back to the original state, and then we'll see the state update itself. Now this is a hot restart, so we're back to the original state of the app, and we'll click on get new activity. It loads up, and then when it's done loading, it gets the data and then displays it for us. So it's saying rearrange and organize your room. It's a busy work, one participant. You don't have to pay for it. Now we can click this again to get another activity. It loads again, and when it gets the activity, it comes up. It says go to a local thrift shop. It's recreational and one participant. It's going to cost you 10 cents. And you could continue doing this to get as much activities as you want, and you keep updating your app this way. So this is basically how you integrate APIs in Flutter, and you see how helpful that classes are in this case. And we've also been able to see how we can update the state of an app by calling set states whenever we need to we need to update something that the user is seeing. Now, just a side note, set state only works for a stateful widget, right? So if you're using a stateless widget, then you need to use a state management tool or something like that. Thank you for staying with me till the end of the video. I really hope you've learned something today. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified whenever I drop new videos. I'm going to do my best to keep updating this channel so we can grow the community. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.